The story does not begin on the glittering boulevards of Paris, as many presume, but in the modest German town of Krefeld, nestled along the Rhine. There, on January 10, 1801, a boy named Thierry Hermès was born into a humble Protestant family. He was the sixth child of a tavern keeper and a mother of Rhenish descent. When Thierry was just 20 years old, tragedy struck twice. Within a short span, he lost both his father and his mother. The orphaned young man, carrying little more than his name and his determination, crossed the border into France. He did not head straight for the capital, but settled in Pontarlier, a small town in Normandy renowned for its leather craftsmanship. There, Thierry became an apprentice to a master harness maker. He learned the ancient art of cutting, stitching, and finishing leather, not for the comfort of humans, but for the dignity of horses. He discovered the saddle stitch, a technique requiring 2 needles and a single wax thread, moving in opposite directions. It was a stitch that could outlast any machine, a stitch that would, decades later, become the very signature of an empire. In 1828, Thierry married Christine Pierrard, and soon after, the couple welcomed a son, Charles Emile. By then, Thierry had transformed from an apprentice into a master artisan. He felt the magnetic pull of Paris. The city where fortunes were forged and taste was crowned. On a spring day in 1837, Thierry opened his first workshop at 56 Rue Basse du Rempart, near the Madeleine Church. It was a modest atelier no larger than a stable. Yet within those walls, Thierry pursued a radical philosophy, that the gear of a horse could be not only functional but also beautiful. He noticed how ill-fitted harnesses chafed the horses of the nobility. He designed straps that were strong, comfortable, and elegant, qualities rarely found together. Word spread among the aristocracy. Soon, the highest seal of approval arrived. Napoleon III himself and his wife, Empress Eugenie, became clients. At the Paris World's Fair of 1867, Thierry Hermès received the first prize for his harnesses. The saddler from Krefeld had arrived. Thierry passed away in 1878, leaving the house to his only son, Charles Emile. The new patriarch possessed his father's hands and his grandfather's vision. In 1880, he made a decision that would echo through history. He moved the workshop to 24 Rue du Faubourg Saint-Honoré. The neighborhood was then on the edge of Paris, bordering the countryside. But Charles Emile sensed the city's expansion. The building he chose, with its gray stone facade and wrought iron balconies, would become the spiritual heart of Hermès, the address that connoisseurs would whisper with reverence for generations. Charles Emile had 2 sons, Adolphe and Emile Maurice. In 1902, the brothers rebranded the company as Hermès Frères, Hermès Brothers. The business flourished, supplying saddles and harnesses to the carriages of Europe's elite. But then, the horseless carriage appeared. Adolphe looked at the automobile and saw an ending. "There is no future in horse equipment," he declared. He lost faith. Emile Maurice looked at the same machine and saw a beginning. "The horse may retire," he thought, "but the leather will stay. The need for exquisite travel will remain." In 1919, the brothers parted ways. Adolphe sold his shares. Emile Maurice borrowed money, bought his brother out, and became the sole master of Hermès. He immediately began transforming the house. Saddles gave way to luggage. Harnesses evolved into handbags. He introduced the first leather handbag for women in 1922, inspired by his own wife's complaint that she could not find a bag she truly loved. Then came his masterstroke. While traveling in North America, Emile Maurice discovered a curious new device called the zipper. He secured the exclusive rights for its use in leather goods in France. He renamed it the Hermès Fastener. It was the first time the family name appeared not on a saddle, but on a piece of hardware that would fasten the future. The daughters inherited. Emile Maurice married Julie Hollande, and together they had 4 daughters, but no sons. Under French law of the time, the family name could have died. But Emile Maurice was a man of ingenuity. He arranged for his daughters to marry 3 gifted men who would carry the Hermès legacy forward, by adding the sacred name to their own. Yvonne, born 1902, married Francis Puch. Jacqueline, born 1903, married Robert Dumas. Aline, born 1907, married Jean-René Guérin. The fourth daughter, Rosalie, would also contribute, but it was these three sons-in-law who infused the house with new blood while preserving its soul. When Émile Maurice died in 1951, leadership passed to Robert Dumas. Though not a Hermès by birth, he was a Hermès by marriage and by spirit. In 1937, he had designed the first Hermès silk scarf, a care that would become a canvas for artists. In the 1930s, he had reimagined a bag originally designed. In 1956, the world was still recovering from war and hungry for fairy tales. Grace Kelly, the luminous American actress, had just become Princess of Monaco. She was photographed for the cover of Life magazine, stepping off a yacht, dressed in a pale pink suit as she descended the gangplank. She held a large leather handbag in front of her, not as a prop, but to shield her pregnant belly from the persistent paparazzi. The bag she held was Robert Dumas's sac à dépêches. The image became iconic. Women everywhere clamored for the bag Grace Kelly used to hide her pregnancy. In 1977, Hermès officially renamed it the Kelly bag. A legend was born not from advertising, but from a single graceful gesture of privacy. The next chapter would be written by Jean-Louis Dumas, Robert's son. Born in 1938, Jean-Louis took the helm in 1978. He was a tall, elegant man with the quiet intensity of an artist and the business acumen of a statesman. He expanded Hermès across the globe: New York, Tokyo, Seoul, Beijing. But his most famous creation began in the most unlikely of places. In 1984, Jean-Louis was seated on a flight from Paris to London. Next to him was the British-French actress and singer Jane Birkin, free-spirited, bohemian, famous for her breathy voice and her love affair with Serge Gainsbourg. As the flight progressed, Birkin's straw bag tipped over. Her belongings, diaries, cosmetics, papers, spilled across the floor. Frustrated, she turned to the gentleman beside her and complained, "Why can't someone make a woman's bag that is both beautiful and practical? Something large enough for a young mother's needs?" The gentleman smiled. He introduced himself, Jean-Louis Dumas, chairman of Hermès. Birkin, unimpressed by titles, grabbed the airsickness bag from the seat pocket. With a pen, she sketched her dream bag, wide, deep, with pockets inside, modeled after the size of a day trip basket. Jean-Louis took the sketch. He did not promise anything. He simply folded it into his jacket and disappeared after landing. Months later, a large, supple leather bag arrived at Jane Birkin's home. It was exactly as she had drawn it. The handles were sized to slip over the wrist. The design was clean, timeless, and functional. Jean-Louis asked if he could name it after her. She agreed. The Birkin bag, requiring up to 40 hours of labor from a single artisan, crafted from a single sheet of leather, stitched with the same saddle stitch Thierry Hermès had learned in Normandy, became the most coveted handbag on earth in July 2025. The original prototype, given to Jane Birkin, sold at auction for €8.6 million, approximately $15.2 million, becoming the most expensive handbag in history. Today, the Hermès family counts over 100 living descendants, but only about 16 core heirs control the majority of the company. Unlike nearly every other luxury house, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Chanel, Hermès has never been acquired by a conglomerate. It remains fiercely, proudly independent. The family's combined wealth is estimated at $151 billion, making them the richest family in Europe and the third richest in the world. Since 2013, Axel Dumas, Jean-Louis' nephew, has served as CEO, while Pierre-Alexis Dumas, Jean-Louis' son, holds the position of artistic director. They have navigated the digital age without sacrificing the house's core philosophy. No compromise on quality, no surrender to speed, no dilution of the hand. The Hermès family didn't play sports as professional athletes. Instead, they did something far more interesting. They built sports into the very DNA of their empire, and they continue to compete not on fields, but through the events they create, the artisans they train, and the spirit of competition they have nurtured for nearly 2 centuries. Let me tell you the story of how a saddlery workshop became an unexpected patron of sport. To understand Hermès and sport, you must first understand one thing. The horse was always the priority. As Jean-Louis Dumas, The legendary former CEO who created the Birkin bag once said, "At Hermès, the horse is our first client." This wasn't a marketing slogan. It was the literal truth. When Thierry Hermès opened his workshop in 1837, he wasn't designing for fashionistas on the Champs-Élysées. He was designing for the most demanding athletes of the 19th century, horses and their riders. His harnesses and saddles had to perform under extreme conditions: speed, endurance, jumps, sudden stops. A poorly stitched saddle could mean the difference between victory and a broken neck. So while the Hermès family themselves weren't athletes, they were equipped athletes from the very beginning. And that technical rigor, the obsession with comfort, safety, and performance, became the foundation of everything they built. If you want to see the Hermès family's sporting passion in action today, you go to Paris every spring. Not to a fashion show, to a horse jumping competition. Since 2010, Hermès has hosted the Saut Hermès at the magnificent Grand Palais in Paris, a soaring glass and steel cathedral built for the 1900 World's Fair, where equestrian events were once a grand tradition before disappearing for decades. Hermès brought them back. The Saut Hermès is not a casual affair. It is an CSI 5-star event, the highest classification awarded by the International Equestrian Federation, FEI, reserved for elite international show jumping. Riders from over 20 countries compete for glory beneath the Grand Palais' breathtaking glass dome, leaping over obstacles painted in Hermès orange, some shaped like the famous H logo. Chloé Nobecourt, Hermès director of equestrian métier, describes it this way: "For me, it is a family reunion. We welcome incredible riders, our partner riders, our teams, our craftsmen, clients, press, and the public, all passionate about the horse. This is the Hermès version of sport. Elegant, precise, deeply rooted in heritage, and utterly devoid of the screaming corporate sponsorship you see at football matches. There are no billboards screaming, 'Buy this.' Instead, there is a quietly luxurious gathering where the trophy is hand-stitched by Hermès leather artisans, and the real competition is between riders who have trained their entire lives for this moment." The family's sporting legacy reached the global stage at the Olympics. In 1996 in Atlanta, and again in 2012 in London, Hermès was chosen to design the official uniforms for the French equestrian team. The 2012 uniform was quintessential Hermès, a navy blue blazer with a striking red collar, subtle nods to the French flag, but executed with the house's signature restraint. No logos screaming for attention, just impeccable tailoring, luxurious wool, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are wearing the best, as one observer noted at the time. While other luxury brands plastered their names across Olympic athletes, Hermès simply dressed the riders who understood, better than anyone, the importance of a well-made saddle. The story of how Hermès entered the world of luxury women's handbags begins not with a single aha moment, but with a generational pivot. It was a journey from the stables of 19th century Paris to the wrists of the world's most glamorous women. Here is the narrative of that transformation. The credit for steering Hermès into the world of luxury handbags belongs to Émile Maurice Hermès, Thierry's grandson. Taking over in the early 20th century, Émile Maurice possessed a crucial foresight that his brother Adolphe lacked. As the automobile began to replace the horse-drawn carriage, Adolphe saw the end of their business. Émile Maurice, however, saw a new beginning. He realized that the family's expertise in working with the finest leathers could be translated from the horse to the human. This shift was cemented in the 1920s. The true catalyst was reportedly a personal one. His wife complained that she couldn't find a handbag she loved. In response, Émile Maurice designed one himself. This act marked the official birth of the Hermès handbag division, transforming a saddlery into a luxury leather goods house. This era also saw him introduce the zipper to France, calling it the Hermès fastener, further demonstrating his innovative spirit in fashion. And so, we have journeyed together through time, from a small workshop in Paris in 1837, where the horse was the very first client, to the pinnacle of luxury, where a Birkin bag has become more valuable than gold and outperforms the stock market. This is the story of a family that never compromised on quality, never rushed fate, and believed that true craftsmanship is made by hand, with time, and with devotion to the craft itself. Hermès was never just a fashion house. It was a lesson in patience and proof that real luxury isn't made by machines. It is made by hands that love what they do. If this story inspired you, and you enjoy tales of legacy, ambition, and timeless elegance, then hit that like button to support meaningful storytelling. Drop a comment below. Tell me, which story captivated you more? The tale of the Kelly bag and Princess Grace, or the chance encounter that created the Birkin on an airplane? Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story from the world of fashion, fortune, and the dreams that built empires. Until next time, remember, every great success begins with a small idea and the craftsmanship to bring it to life. Take care, and I'll see you in the next story.